welcome to another session of the Easton Book Festival. Today, we're very happy to have the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group back to, we have a few of their members here to talk, and I'm going to turn it over to Laurel Wenson, who will introduce the other panelists. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Laurel Wenson. I am back to moderate the next little panel discussion we're having on National Novel Writing Month, where all of us have been involved. Some of us are involved this month, and we're hoping that a lot of you who saw our introduction to National Novel Writing Month have joined us this month and are finishing up your first week of NaNoWriMo. And we're going to just kind of check in today and see how everybody's doing. We'll kind of go over some of the terminology that maybe you're just learning or you're doing for the first time. And we're really hoping that this will be an informative discussion to help you see into the lives of those of us that have been doing Nano, what it's like, what the day-to-day is, what some of the challenges are, and what you kind of can expect in the days and weeks to come. So I am going to let each panelist introduce themselves a little bit, just a really brief hello, how are you, how long have you been doing Nano? You probably saw this when we did the introduction to Nano panel a couple of weeks ago, but let's start out with Mitzi. We'll let you introduce yourself first, and we'll ask that you unmute and say hello.
My name is Mitzi Reinbold. I write under Mitzi Flight. That was my name when I was first published, so I'm keeping that as my writer's name. I've had some success writing. I have self-published one book, a paranormal romance, and I wrote freelance for the Easton Irregular, also the Express Times. I've had some short stories in anthologies, and I've been doing Nano off and on for maybe about 10 years. I have on my Nano score sheet that they have on their website, you've got your own page on its website. I have almost 300,000 words. That doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot when you count the number of times I've attempted. The big thing about Nano is they'd like you to have the 50,000 words at the end of the month. But the best thing is you've got more words than you started with because you've been writing. That's the big thing. So, and that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Thanks, Mitzi. And that is the absolute key goal. I'm going to let Sue, you can give yourself a quick introduction.
Okay. I am Susan Monroe. I'm a librarian at the Lehigh Emmaus Public Library. I've been doing NaNoWriMo since 2003. I have 600,000 words, which tells you that I did not reach 50,000 for every one of those. It has been an interesting and stressful year, and so, you know, this is a good time to get your writer on and start doing some imagining and creativity.
Thanks, Sue. But Christine, why don't you tell us a little bit about you? I know that you are you've done Nano at least once, or I think more than once actually. So why don't you introduce yourself and say hello to everybody?
Hi, my name is Christine Talley. I participated in NaNoWriMo for 4 years and finished 1 year and self-published that novel, The Girl and the Bird, Romance and Alien Power in the Current Middle Ages. I've written off and on my whole life. I've written poetry and have a poem in one of the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group's anthologies. One poem is there. And I just have really enjoyed NaNoWriMo and recommend it to anybody as a method to get yourself off your butt and start, because for me, it was a kick in the pants to do it. I'm not sure if I ever would have written a novel if it weren't for NaNoWriMo. So good luck and do it.
Thanks, Christine. I am back. I hope the others find their way back as well. I think we're having some technical difficulties, but they will hopefully be worked out. My name is Laurel Wenson. I have been doing NaNoWriMo since 2016, and I have gotten 3 successful, one was at Camp Nano and the other 2, actually 2 were Camp Nano and the third was a regular Nano. But I have managed to publish all 3 of those books that I drafted, and I'm currently working on the 4th right now. I think we're all back. That's a really good thing. I got really nervous. I don't know if that was Easton Book Festival's glitch or my glitch, but you're all there now, so that's a good thing. So we're going to start off again. We're hoping that you are all having a great first week. We're going to talk a little bit right now about what we are writing. We all come from different backgrounds. We all write different genres. And so I'm going to let each person talk a little bit about what their genre is and a simple plot summary as to maybe what your story is about that you're working on. What kind of a setting you are working in, and then maybe an overview of your main characters. And, if you want to talk a little bit about how you did that, you can, but basically you're introducing your story so that everybody can kind of see who you are, where you are, and what characters are playing out in your story. And Christine, I know that you're not doing Nano this year, but you can use examples from the past to share the same information. So, in fact, Christine, why don't we start with you? If you want to just talk a little bit about the last story. I know that you did it in the introduction panel a couple weeks ago, but some people may not have seen that. So just use that book as your guideline for this little session.
Well, I started out with no clue what I was going to write about. I figured it would probably have to be science fiction because that's my favorite thing. Science fiction and fantasy are my favorite things to read. But other than that, I had really no idea. I wound up getting just basically a sentence of an idea for an alien power. And when I sat down first day, that was all I knew. And, but once I sat down and started writing, the ideas just kind of started to flow. And I wound up writing about using my experience as a sword and shield fighter in the Society for Creative Anachronism. I wound up using that in my novel, so that really helped fill things out a lot. And it wound up becoming a romance, which surprised me.
Okay. Sue, why don't you share a little bit about what you're currently working on?
Well, I started with the idea of writing a science fiction novel, and then life kind of gave me an avalanche of things going on in my personal life. So what I've been doing is I have been writing bits and pieces of things, of memoir things, of things that are happening in life or have been happening in my life. It occurred to me that there were a lot of questions that I'd kind of like to answer myself and leave behind record of. So most of what I've been writing has been a memoir, with bits and pieces of my original novel once in a while. Uh, I write a little bit every day, and I am trying to keep my word count up. I usually have a little bit of time to write when we have the election because I'm at the poll all day. And usually we have busy times interspersed with times when there's absolutely nobody in. And then I have my pad and pencil and I write. And that was not a consideration this election. It was quite busy and I did not have time to sit and do any writing at the polls this year. So it's been kind of interesting, and I am behind on my word count. I'm not up at, I guess it should be like 20,000 words at this point, but no, I'm about half that, and still working, still writing, because that is the entire point of this, is to write. Uh, if I don't finish the novel, that's okay. But I will have written something and I will have something to go back to look at later on.
That's true. And I don't think the word count is quite up to that right now. I think we're around 16, 17,000 is where the day is. Mitzi, why don't you introduce yourself and give us just a quick image, a quick glimpse into what you're looking at and writing.
Well, right now I'm writing a women's fiction with some paranormal elements. It's about it's about 3 women who are going through menopause and develop superpowers, different superpowers. Instead of the changes that happen through menopause, these are big changes that they're going through. And how these affect the women and the people around them, and the men in their lives, how it affects the men in their lives. The setting, I am using Easton as a setting, and I also am using the 3rd Street Alliance as the women's center in my story because it's a great place and I wanted to promote it. So, and it is interesting. I started this book before Nano. I had about 14,000 words written. I'm not including that in my Nano count, of course. I started this book several years ago, and then I came back to it and thought, why aren't you working on this? Why aren't you finishing this book? Finish it with Nano, at least move along with it with Nano. And it's interesting how it's been moving along. Now I have about 7,000 words for this week, which I think for me is pretty good. 1,000 a day is not bad for me. I have done Nano where I got the 1660 or whatever it is. And that was when I was working and I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning to write. Now that I'm not working, it's like, oh, I got all the time in the world. No, that doesn't, you really have to sort of like discipline yourself. I'm going to sit down and write. And all that to be read pile of books I have has to stay over there. And I read them later. But that's what I'm working on.
That's great. And I can attest, I have heard little glimpses of Mitzi's story that she's working on in Writers Cafe, and I will be one of the first in line to order that book when it's written because it's really good stuff.
Thank you.
I am currently working on the 3rd book of a series. I wrote the first book in 2018 during Nano, and I wrote the 2nd book this past July for Camp Nano, and it just came out, or it's coming out December 1st. And my readers just said, you just need to finish the series. And I thought, well, you know what? There's Nano right around the corner. I might as well jump in. So I'm writing book 3. The first book was a young adult fiction. The 2nd book is young adult and new adult. The main characters, or a couple of the main characters, are a little bit older. But I really think if I had to pick a genre, is more of a small town fiction. And I know that's not an actual genre, I don't think, but because my characters, they span all ages, I just feel that that's what I'm calling it. So it really feels comfortable for me. I am using the same characters. It takes place in a small fictional town of Caldwell, Massachusetts, which is very loosely based on a small town in Massachusetts called Concord, which is where I grew up. The main characters in this particular novel are two that were in the past novel, and well, they've been in all of them, but it's a young girl named Cassie, who is a senior in high school, and then a social worker named Maggie, who is 24. And they are both individuals who are dealing with anorexia. Maggie has been in recovery for 6 or 7 years. Cassie has just been in recovery for about 6 months now, and she has been helped a lot by Maggie. But it's really, this story is kind of telling both of their stories as they continue on. And Cassie is also reunited with two of the characters from the first book as they are now back in school. Book 2 kind of took place during the summer months. So it's just a continuation of 2 storylines, but the main theme of the story is friendship, multi-generational friendship, family, and recovery from obstacles. In this particular series, it's anorexia. My goal is for every series is to pick some kind of a main theme that can run through all the stories. And because I know young women who have dealt with anorexia and fought it and recovered from it, I thought that that was a really important one that could be put out there as encouragement for those who might be struggling or know people who struggle with it, to show that recovery is possible. So moving on, let's get away from me again so that we can go back to people that don't go in and out. So let's talk a little bit about the first week. Our first week is now over. We have all survived. And this was a very challenging first week of Nano of a lot of different years. Between the election and the pandemic, we have definitely done a Nano like none other. But again, to go over just the basics, Nano does encourage you to try and write 50,000 words in 30 days. That being said, as Mitzi said, that's not the main goal. The main goal is that you write every day. If you were going onto the Nano website and you have your profile set up and you have your projects listed, you then can go to your statistic bar and actually put in your word count every time and see the little arrow going up. And that's really, really a strong visual for most of us, to just see that arrow going up. And the goal for each day, if you are going to try to get to that 50,000, is 1,667 words a day. Again, that is just if you are shooting for that 50,000, that's what your goal is. Many of us in the past, I know the first time I did Nano, I had a goal for 23,000. I didn't even attempt to do 50. So the whole goal is to really make sure that you're writing every day. So let's talk about this past week. How did your first day go? Have you written every day? Are you meeting your word counts? And if not, I know Sue shared a little bit about missing a day. And then, do you have a time of day that works the best for you? Or do you write all at once, or do you write in chunks? And then, what were your biggest challenges for this first week? I know that's a lot. So give us what you can for an overall of the first week. And let's start with you this time, Mitzi, because Sue went first the last time.
Okay, well, I started, and I had an idea in my head. I do what is called like a thinkology. I think the scenes through in my head, and then I write them down. And I've been thinking about a couple of scenes, and that first day I wrote them down. I'm not meeting my word count. I have fibromyalgia, and I have low back pain from being a nurse for too many years. and the fibros in my upper back. And after a while, I get upper back pain and right arm and shoulder pain. And I've been trying to change positions with the desk and everything so that I don't get that. But I have been making at least 1,000 words a day, and that's good. And what are the other questions? What else?
Do you have a time of day that works best for you? Or do
Oh,
you write
I
all
write
at once
best
or
in the
break it up?
I write best in the morning. And I think that comes from when I was working and I would get up at 5 o'clock and write. And so I still have that idea of getting up. And I think about it before I go to bed. I think about the scenes before I go to bed and I play them out in my head. So maybe in the morning it's easier for them to come out. And what else? It's it's just one of those things I sit down and write. It's something I cannot not do. And Nano's put a focus on it. And I think that's what it's done for a lot of us writers. It's put a focus on it. And when you get used to doing that writing every day, even if it's only 100 words or 200 words a page, then it gets part of your routine and you do it. And that's what Nano has done for a lot of writers. It made the writing a routine. It's easy if you're writing and you're, like most of us, not getting paid for what you're writing right away or sometimes at all, to sort of like put it off and not do it. But having a goal, even if it's a small goal, and doing it every day is what's necessary. And it's putting the butt in the chair. That's the big thing. You got to put that butt in the chair and the hands on the keyboard or the typewriter, whichever you use.
Thank you, Mitzi. Christine, I know that you've done Nano in the past, so maybe you can talk a little bit about, did you meet your word counts on a normal basis? Did you write every day, and maybe what time of day worked best for you?
Okay, well, for me, the first year, I only got to 23,000 words, which, hey, is a pretty decent chunk of a novel. But the thing, at least for me with Nano, is that it really was incentive for me to make the goal of 1,667 words per day. The first year when I got to 23,000 words, I fell behind in my word count early, and then I just kind of gave up, which I shouldn't have. I should have just kept going. But I'm a terrible procrastinator. And so I wound up just sitting on what I'd already accomplished and didn't do anything with it. I kept saying I was going to. And that day just never came until Nano comes around. And then for me, it's just encouraging. I wound up setting my goal as the 1,667 words per day. And for me, that was a real impetus to just set your butt in the chair and the thoughts kind of flowed. Some days were harder than others, obviously. But for me, it was sitting down. That was a big chunk of it, was to get started, just to start writing, even just a paragraph. And then things would start to carry on from there. So that's how it worked for me. And treating myself when I got a word count, that helps too. For me, chocolate was a good thing to help me with my goals.
I think chocolate works for a lot of us. So, Sue, why don't you talk a little bit about, I know that you already shared a little bit about election day and you didn't get any writing done that day, but how was your first week on aside from that? I don't know if Sue is with us or not. I don't know if Sue, I think Sue may be frozen.
I'm just trying to unmute, sorry.
There you are, okay.
Yeah, I was talking, but not coming through. Well, I am part of the Lehigh Valley Rhymos, which is the national novel writing group in the Lehigh Valley. And this year, we're none of us meeting in person. It's been interesting. They have a Discord channel, which is you can do both typing and text messaging. You can also interact verbally. There's no screen, it's just the words. And so on October 31st at 11:30, I was on Discord and talking to people and getting ready so that at 12 o'clock, I could start my writing immediately as soon as it ticked over. And there were a lot of us doing that. It's interesting to hear people talk and chat while we're writing. People do sprints, as I know Laurel's daughter likes to do the sprints. They have this going pretty much constantly, so it is not something that you have to be on at one specific time. So whenever you need that, you can go on the Discord channel, which is how they're handling the lack of interpersonal stuff this year. That was fun. I have been trying to write every day. I'm not writing as much as I usually do. And that's for a number of reasons. I do also have we do prompts at the beginning of every month, the first Thursday of the month at the library. And I thought, oh, well, this would be good. I'll tie it in and we'll all do national novel writing and we'll be on Discord while we're writing the prompts. And that did not work because our library does not allow Discord at the moment. So we're working on that. It's not always easy to write when there's a lot of emotional turmoil going on. I'm dealing with family issues, but also the election has been an enormous time sink. We've been paying attention to that, to the news, to finding out what's going on in the world. COVID is also a great time sink. It's taking attention that ordinarily I would be focusing on writing. And instead, life is occurring. Life doesn't stop, which is one of the reasons that I decided that I was going to start writing about things that are memories, family things that my kids have asked about, things that my sisters have been talking about. And, the characters are my family. And, they're not always likable. You're not always going to have characters in your stories likable, but even more so in a memoir, your families have disagreements. And so that's also part of what's going into my writing right now. These have been some really strong challenges. So what I will probably be doing is picking up in the next couple of weeks, and I will make a strident effort to catch up to what I was doing. But I'm also interacting with the teens this week, where we're going to be doing prompts there as well. So it gets a little distracting when you're supposed to be writing on your own thing and you're working with other people trying to encourage their writing as well. I don't have my list, so I can't see what the other questions were. Let's see. Hold on a sec. I do not have a time of day that works best for me because everything has been really frustrable. So I'm writing when I can. I'm thinking a lot about what I want to write when I'm driving in the car because I do have a 40-minute drive to work in the morning. And if I'm lucky, it's 40 minutes coming home. So a lot of that is taking time to think of things through and think about what I want to put on the paper and how I want to word it. Keeping in mind, it doesn't matter if it's perfect. It just matters that you get the words down on the paper or the screen, because whatever you're writing now, it's not the final product. It's what you are getting down so that you can then go over and either rewrite or put aside, because sometimes things don't work out in your stories. And sometimes you need to put those things aside. I don't throw them away because they might be ideas that I can use in later stories or later memoirs in this case. It's catch as catch can at this point. So I know that we had talked in the last thing about being a rebel. And I think at this point for this, I'm not a plotter at this point. I'm not a pantser. I'm just kind of being a rebel and writing what I have to, because I really do need to write. So that's what I'm working on.
Okay, thanks, Sue. And that's true. We talked during the introductory section about being a plotter who has your notes all out ready to go, or a pantser where you have, like as Christine said, you have a sentence or two and an idea and you sit down and go, or something in between. I found this section, or this past week, I tend to be kind of in the middle. I usually try to get my first 1,000 words written. That's usually my goal for midnight. And I think I went to bed shortly after that. I wrote again in 2 more chunks. That day had been a pretty open day, and I actually ended up with over 7,000 words for my first day, which was my probably all-time highest record. Since then, the week has been, I usually shoot for 2,000 words a day as a goal. I've made that, I think, 3 or 4 of the days. I have written every day. There have been a couple of days when it was lower. I had one day, I think I only wrote 500 words. It was just a really, really bad day. I think that between the pandemic and the election, it's definitely been a challenging week. I live in a divided household, so that I, kind of play counselor to both sides, and that's taken a little bit of time. But again, just there's a lot more going on in the world this week than it normally has. And so I find that one of the reasons I chose the small town genre, I think, was that it was kind of a happily ever after place to escape to. And I really find that I even have friends saying, can I go to Caldwell with you today and just live there for a while? I promised my readers it will be a happily ever after ending, because I think that's, in this crazy, crazy world that we live in, that's maybe what some of us really just want. So I have more or less met my word counts every day. I found it very interesting this year that my writing time has changed. I have always been an early morning writer every time I've done it. This week, I have been doing most of my writing between like 9 o'clock at night and midnight. My bedtime's been a little bit later in the past few months anyway, but that's when I finally seem to have that quiet time of day without any interruptions and nobody coming down to, needing to chat and all of that. So I've been really finding that that's the quiet time. So most of the week I've been writing later in the day, and that's hard for me because I never know if I'm going to have the energy left when I sit down to write. And that's why I usually try to write in the morning. I'm just kind of playing it by ear. So far, my story is coming along okay. And I know that for me, the next 2 weeks are harder usually than the first week, because I've usually had that excitement and that, head of steam building up. And then the dreariness of it all sets in, like as Sue was saying, you're writing something that you're just going to have to either totally revise or take out or redo. And knowing that the revision process is coming is sometimes a really big challenge anyway, but you just keep going. I'm a plotter. I have my notes, and I think I've gotten through 7 chapters, and 4 of them, I've already got big chunks of things that either didn't include or I had to move. Or so for me, I also have to fight that urge to edit as I go. And my daughter's been great that way. She just keeps saying, Mom, get the words on the page. That's all this is for Nano, is to get the words on the page. And so that's where I am this week. So let's I know that we only have about 15 minutes left. So let's just kind of try to talk a little bit. How are you doing? Are you enjoying the process right now? Are you liking your characters? Are there any areas that you find are going really well? I know we've talked a little bit about this already. Having any problems? What are your challenges this week? And what I know Christine touched upon this a little bit about, what are you using to stay motivated? So just kind of that overall, like, are you enjoying the process? Are you liking your characters? And then, like, what are you doing to keep yourself going? And then we'll have 1 or 2 questions still to go, but that will, and Christine, I just noticed you unmuted. So why don't you pick up and go first and just share where you are right now.
Okay. Well, for me, I was a pantser, of course. Tell by what I said earlier. For me, developing my story and trying to move things along, sometimes I had to sit and think for a while. I had my favorite character. Well, like I said, my story wound up having romance in it. It had 2 romances in it, actually. And my favorite character is a nurse who is saying that she's homely, is putting it mildly, and very overweight. But it's like always the beautiful woman gets the handsome guy. And I wanted the unlovely person. She was beautiful inside, and she's my favorite character in the story. And I just wanted the woman who was not beautiful to get the handsome guy. And so that's what happens in one of the romances. That's how I had developed it. And with the other romance, it was the damaged woman. She had a tragedy in her past, and she had a failed marriage and a child. So her romance was complicated. Also complicated by the fact that she's a fighter, a sword fighter, and her lover is on the opposing side. So that helped me with developing her, getting motivation with her, with the tragedies that she'd gone through, and having mental illness and dealing with that, and complicating her romance. So that helped. That certainly helped with my word count. And it helped develop the plot. I wound up throwing something else at her too, which hoping someday somebody might be interested in reading my book, so I won't give it away. but I was stuck in my plot, and I decided to really throw a monkey wrench at her, and that really helped move my plot along. So I guess what else was it?
Okay, thank you so much, Christine. Mitzi, why don't you tell us a little bit about your characters? I know that you've got several main characters, and are you writing, one of my questions for you is, are you writing in a dual point of view? Do they all tell their own story?
It's separate points of view. They all are going to grow in their lives for different reasons. And because of the unusual abilities they've been getting during their menopause, that's going to help them grow. My only problem right now is I don't like the men who I have in the stories. And I have to bring in some nice men. And I'm trying to work that out. I have a husband who's a wife beater. And not me. I want to clarify that. One of the characters' husbands is a wife beater. And I either want to have him evolve or something. I have to make some man in the story a good person. And that's one of the things I'm working on. And that's kind of hard because I've made people not so nice in the beginning of the story. And not everybody is one-sided. There's good things and bad things in all of us. So I think that's one of the hardest things to do when you're writing characters is to make sure you bring out all their sides and you focus on the good parts of them that you want to focus on, but understanding that there's some darkness in us all. So that's been my difficulty lately. And I just wrote a scene where I made the gentleman who's the wife beater, who's also campaigning for senator, say something nasty to one of his wife's friends. And I'm trying to, how do I get around that? I better do something with that, or it's not going to be so very nice. So, and it's one of those problems you have when you're writing. And see, what else did you want to know? Put the words on the paper, damn it.
Are you enjoying your stories? Are you enjoying the characters and how, your world building? You said it's in Easton, so that's probably an easy one.
Really easy because I think Easton, Pennsylvania, and the world is right there, but I sort of switch it around a little bit. I've even got them in the quadrant. If you know what the quadrant is, I've even got them in the quadrant from one of the scenes, but I don't call it the quadrant, of course. And I've talked about I'm talking about certain things in the story, in the plot, social things that we have, the country has. And one of the things is the Women's Center in my plot. They're working on a 5G program, and that's not the internet. It's a Golden Girls program where they get houses and older women who don't want to go into assisted living yet, or who don't have any other place to live and can't afford an apartment. They all get together and they all have a bedroom in these houses and they work together. And they couldn't call it Golden Girls because of copyright. So they decided to call it the 5G program, which also might have a copyright problem for it. But one of the things I wanted to bring out was that women have a lot of strengths in them and inside them, in each woman, not necessarily superpowers, but when you really look at it, we do have superpowers and we use them all the time. And there's so many issues in the world that we can use those superpowers for. And that's sort of like the underlying idea of this story. that I just discovered in the last day or so. And that's the other thing that's interesting. You could be writing and not really know what you're writing about until you're in the middle of it. And there you go, aha, that's it. And I want you to know, I enjoyed being in Caldwell. I'm going back for a visit to Caldwell for a little bit. I'm almost finished the first book. So I'm enjoying Caldwell. It reminds me of my hometown, which was named Laurel, as a matter of fact. So yes, I think we all seek certain things in books that, get us in the heart. And that's one of the things as a writer, you have to understand, what are you going to get in the heart for your reader?
Thanks, Mitzi. Sue, why don't you give us just an update? I know you've basically talked a little bit already about how you're writing memoirs, but I'm assuming you're just using your normal world, but what have been your biggest challenges?
Well, and I was just thinking about that. Part of the challenge is to make what seems very ordinary and plain to me to be interesting to a reader. You were talking about small town fiction, which is a genre, but it occurs to me that what is small town for me, the town that I grew up in, Hershey, Pennsylvania, may not be small town for somebody who grew up in Walnut Port, Pennsylvania, or New Jersey, or every place is a little bit different. We all like the comfort of thinking of the past that we grew up with, but the world that I grew up in is not the world today. And it's not the world that my kids grew up in. Even writing memoirs, you're writing characters and you are writing your world building, because the world, I don't even know that the world that I remember was the actual world at the time, because we were very insulated. It was a very small town and everybody was related to everybody else and everybody knew you. So if you were a kid running through somebody's backyard, your grandmother would know by the end of the day, if not before that. And part of it has to be writing it so that I'm finding it fun to write about and not boring. And also to make it interesting because I would like these stories to be read. You don't always just write for yourself. You do write stories that you want to read, but you also are hoping that somebody is going to read these stories and be interested in the things you're writing. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. It is allergy season, as most people around here know. It is always allergy season. So part of the whole thing is writing from my experience, excuse me, and trying to make it as interesting as possible for myself to write. Because if it's boring, you're going to stop writing. And the whole idea is to make this fun, because if it's not fun, why do it? This is not my job. This is something I do because I like to do it. And because the stories are there and they just keep coming out and they've got to go somewhere. So they might as well go on the page. So those are my challenges at the moment.
Thanks, Sue. I like that image that, the stories have to go somewhere, so you might as well put them on a page. That's really good advice for anybody. I think this has been a challenging week for me, only the characters and the setting have been easy. I find that because I'm now in book 3 of the series, I know my characters. They've become friends. They've become family members. They really, they are who they are. And I trust them to tell the story when I'm not quite sure where we're going or if I hit a roadblock. The one challenge I'm having is this is the first time I'm writing in a dual perspective. I'm using 2 different points of view from Maggie and Kathy. And even though I've done a ton of research into the world of the anorexic early on in recovery, and just how that, it's a disease of the head more than anything, and how that those old tapes are there and they will try to play throughout the recovery process. It's, I'm finding that I'm sometimes struggling really getting inside Cassie's head, where she's so early in her recovery, because the tapes play a lot louder and it's a lot easier for her to want to slip back into the old patterns. So that's been one challenge that I've really been working at this week. And I know I have a lot of revisions to do in that. I also find that last night I was just telling my daughter, I said, I feel like this story is so much more boring than the other two that I wrote. But I think it's just because the conflict has just not been as big a conflict as in maybe the other two stories. And that one thing I did find when I went to a conference, when I sat in a workshop, and it really struck me, and it gave me some peace this week, and knowing that conflicts are not always like the World War II or the big explosions that we deal with. Sometimes life is all about just those everyday conflicts that we have to deal with. And so, the main conflict of this story is overcoming those obstacles in recovery, but also Cassie is dealing with some conflicts with her father, and just the way that their relationship has strengthened in her early recovery. But now that she's back home again, those old patterns are so easy to fall back into. And that's really the crux of the matter. And she's also just full of doubt right now. She's really wanting to embrace her life again. And it's not that easy to do because she's scared. She doesn't have the confidence that Maggie has 6 years later. So that's where I'm in the conflict. I know it will get exciting. And I know that sometimes it's not until you're revising that you really are able to fix things. But I love my characters and I love my small town. And yes, it is loosely based on where I grew up. Anybody who grew up in the same town with me during that era, I know it has changed much since then, but I do try to put one or two little things in the story that anybody that was in the town at the time should be able to recognize. And I have had people email me saying, is this restaurant in real life? And it's just kind of like, yeah, that's the one. So that's kind of been like those little clues for the people that grew up in that town. I think in the future, when I finish this series, I'm going to try to pick a place for each series and really research that place and the time frame that it's in, and try to do the same thing. Just try to include one or two real places from that place that go into this fictional town, so that those that are reading it can still enjoy it. I'll also include a map. I included a map this year for the second book, and a friend of mine did it, and she's already agreed to be my map maker for the future, which I think is kind of fun, because then people can visualize where these things are as they journey through the town. So little things that I'm learning. So those are the main problems that I'm dealing with, just learning how to do that dual point of view. I finally decided to just alternate chapters back and forth and tell their stories in a parallel fashion, so that the time is still moving pretty much at the same time frame, but it's easy to know that you're inside one head as opposed to the other. And this is the first time I'm doing that. So that's kind of a challenge, but it's also really a neat way to grow as a writer. Let's finish this off. It's 4 o'clock. So again, what are you wanting to tell the writers that are out there that have gotten through their first week? They're kind of all of our nano buddies right along with us. And just what do you tell the people to look forward to in the next couple of weeks? And then again, we'll meet again in December so that you can come back and celebrate whatever successes you had, whether or not it was 50,000 words or more words than you started with on November 1st. But so final thoughts and final encouragements for the people that are moving forward into week 2. Let's just stay with the same order. It seems to work. Christine, final thoughts and encouragements for our readers.
Okay, well, whatever works for you is going to be different for every person. Time of day, whatever. just find what works for you. For me, the evening was a good time for me to write. That was just when I guess I was most relaxed and able to write. But it helps also to get in contact with the other NaNoWriMo folks in online, and also with the local group. They helped me when I was sort of stuck on something, just bouncing ideas back and forth. Even if you didn't use the ideas, it just would kind of get you unglued. So that could help. And I just had a very encouraging husband. Well, he's still encouraging. And he really, if you can find someone who can encourage you, and just tell you, yes, you can do this, calm down, you're gonna make it. My husband was very helpful with that. So if you can find someone who encourages you, that might be something helpful for you. So just sit and write. It's an amazing thing you're accomplishing. Not everyone in the world does this. It's a crazy thing to do in some ways. But it's just something that is quite an accomplishment when you're done. You can look back on it and feel proud that you did it. Then, of course, all the rewriting happens, and the editing, but you've done something amazing in a month.
Thanks, Christine. That's great advice too, knowing that, this is the first step, but it's an amazing step. Mitzi, final thoughts and encouragement for the world.
I think the best thing to remember is you're not just a writer for 1 month. It's not just November. It's your whole life. If you really are a writer, it's your whole life. November, you write the first draft. December, you take off because of Christmas. January, you do revisions. February, you find an editor, then get it out of the house in March. And I wish I'd listened to my own advice, because I just want to write. I wish to hand a book over to somebody to hear. You edit, you revise, you put it together and send it out. But that's what it is. You're a writer for the whole year, not just November. And I wish everybody the best of luck. 100 words a day, 1,600 words a day. It doesn't make any difference, just as long as you're writing.
Absolutely great advice. And again, you set your word, you set the word count that works for you. Absolutely. Sue, final thoughts and encouragement.
There we go, unmuted. I myself really like revising. I know it's not everybody's favorite thing, but I love going back and saying, okay, how can I make this better? But you can do that at Camp Nano too, just saying. My suggestions, get involved. If you're on Facebook, join the Lehigh Valley Rhymos. There is a link, there are several links there to all the different things that you can access. Join us on Discord. Join us on the NaNoWriMo forums. There are all sorts of possibilities and alternatives. You're welcome to take a look at our writing prompts on the Emmaus Public Library Facebook page and add your own stuff, because we leave those up and people are always welcome to continue to add to them. We do that once a month. But write what you like. Write the things you enjoy. Writing should be a pleasant, well, no, not always pleasant. Sometimes it is cathartic. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it is what needs to get out. But there should be something you are getting out of it. It should not be, well, I'm just going to write it because I said I was going to write 50,000 words. That's never a good way to do it. But write. You have an immense possibility inside of you. You have the creative juices to get this going. Write what you would like to read, write what you know, but write, and do your best to get as many words out as you can. And absolutely do not stop once the month is over. Writing is something that should be going on all the time. And we'll be happy to tell you how this all works out in December.
Thanks, Sue. Yeah, keep in mind that we will be coming back for one more session in December to kind of wrap all this up. I guess what I would just add to everybody is try to take care of yourself. Be gentle. I find that November is a month that is really hard to like forget to just do the simple things like drink enough water and get enough sleep and exercise every now and then, and just have, you know, healthy meals if you can. And for me, I find like, you know, planning ahead, so you put a couple things in the crock pot so you don't have to cook every single day might help, or just little things. The next couple weeks can be the hardest weeks. It's like that middle of the drudgery sets in. When you get to the end of the month, it gets a little more exciting again because you know you're in the final stretch. So keep that in mind. All this advice has been wonderful. Find support wherever you can find support, whether it be the Nano buddies that you find online or in the forums, or just family members. I know for me, I post a daily update on Facebook, just on my Facebook page, because I have friends and family from all around the country and my readers that give me that accountability and that encouragement. And so whatever it's going to take to just let you know you're not by yourself. As my daughter said, and I loved what she said in the introduction to Nano panel, she said, you are creating something from nothing, from your brain to the page. And that is a magical thing. And someday somebody may read what you have written saying, this is amazing. So whether or not it's, you know, the goal is to have somebody out there read it, or it's just to get what is inside you out of you, everyone's motivation is different. It doesn't matter. The main thing is that we write. November is set up to help us to get into disciplines that will carry us through the year. And again, there are Nano events throughout the year ahead to help you with revisions, or to work on other aspects, or to start the next project. But Nano is there to help. Again, their vision is to offer support, structure, and community. And I think that they are an amazing organization because they do all three. I've made some great friends through Nano. And I thank every one of you to being a part of this today. I encourage each of you. I know I'll be in touch with you guys to see how your month is going. We will be coming back in December to give one more final wrap up. But until then, I speak on behalf of the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group and the panelists here today. And I want to thank Easton Book Festival for being here, helping with the many technical glitches today, and just being a wonderful support for the community and in the area of books and literary writing awareness, because the festival has been wonderful to be a part of. Have a great month, everybody. Keep on writing, and we will see you all in December. Bye-bye.